Welcome to the Tech Savvy Professor podcast, two faculty who love tech and love to make it a part of their work. I'm Dr. Eric Perry and want to welcome you and thank you for listening.
Hi, Eric. It's Marty, your co-host here on the Tech Savvy Professor. And we had holidays. We took a holiday break for a while. And this show is the post-holiday question and answer because we have some questions and answers to deal with today. And also, I've got an app recommendation at the end of the show that I think helped me out during the holidays, and we can talk about that. How was your holiday? How did things go?
Great. I mean, it was nice to have a break overall. Spend some time with the kids. I got some new tech, actually. I got a new set of Arctis SteelSeries headphones, which is really, really nice. They're USB. They're compatible with PC, if you're a gamer, PlayStation, Xbox, pretty much everything. They're really fantastic quality sound, and they're wireless. So you can switch between actually using wireless or using Bluetooth connectivity, which is nice because I can use them then for my PC via USB. It has a little transponder that comes with it. And then my tablet uses Bluetooth to connect. So I can actually set up connections for all these devices and switch between them really seamlessly. So they're a lot of fun, but it's interesting. Before we started this talk that we're having now, I'm actually on my old set of headphones because I couldn't configure the mic properly for the tool we're using now. So it's I still got bugs to work out, but it's still a pretty exciting gift.
How's the sound quality, if you have any idea, in terms of wireless versus wired versus Bluetooth?
It's gotten a lot better. I mean, it's much closer to what you'd find in a really higher end wired headset. And I think a lot of that Bluetooth is a lot of the reason for that. You actually get a better sound quality via Bluetooth than you do using other wireless technologies, which is a huge switch from what we're used to seeing. So, it's things like putting it on and, if I'm watching a video, I can hear that directional sound really clearly. And, they're noise canceling as well, which is really nice. Good.
My holiday was not as tech involved. I was praying, well, it was tech involved, but, I was hoping to look at a new line of iMacs for the fall because I have an iMac that's been still running strong for it'll go on 5 years coming this spring. And I was looking to upgrade to a new iMac, and Apple has delayed putting one out for that purpose. But as I do, I like to play with the developer versions of software, which is dangerous to do. They always say it's dangerous to put developer software on your primary working computer. Well, yeah, I did. And I could not upgrade to the full version of it. And I said, well, during the break, what I'm going to do is clean all this off and get the new full version on. Every year or so, you need to wipe your computer clean anyways. It's good practice, and reload the operating system. So I said, I'll do that during break. Sure enough, on Christmas, I was trying to turn on the computer and it would not boot up all day long. And I said, well, looks like it's been forced upon me. So I had to wipe the drives both completely clean. And by drives, the Mac that I have has a Fusion drive. So it has a flash drive and also has a disk run drive too that holds most of the materials. So I back up like crazy. I have redundancy with my backups. I use the cloud extensively. So everything that I work with gets stored in the cloud, and I'm working with it on my computer. And or whatever system I'm working on, it's there and available for me in the cloud. So it's less frightening and less of a task than it used to be in the years. But that's how I spent my holiday, a good 3 or 4 days trying to recondition this computer. And now it's running like a top. And I feel even more guilty about wanting to get a new one. But I have little fears about it happening that way. So My holiday was come around, enjoy the holiday. We got the family over. And all I can think of is this crashed computer that's in the den that I'm working on right now.
It made me sweat a little bit when you started to talk about it, honestly. I think I go back to those days when we didn't have the cloud. We didn't have that. I had a backup flash drive, or I had a backup, external hard drive that was way too much money. And now, like you mentioned, if you're careful about it, if you're really good about it, it's much, much easier. It's interesting that you mentioned it too. We had, my wife is PTO president this year. And as president, they gave her this little flash drive that contains everything, the entire history of the parent-teacher organization, all their forms and activities. There is no duplicate copy. And she tells me this prior to showing me the device, which is nearly cracked in half.
Oh, man.
And it's one of your traditional kind of stick device, USB drives, and you can actually push in and push out the connection, right? You're supposed to shield it a little bit. But you can feel the bend in there when you try and put it in the USB drive. And of course, it's nothing I have is recognizing it, right? And there's really no way to recover these files short of a physical fix. There's times when you can wiggle it a little bit and you can get those little connections in there to make contact. This one is just done. So we actually had to find a local tech service that's willing to open it up and resolder those connections.
Wow.
To put it back in. And we got a couple of quotes. And I live in an area, it's not not really an urban area. I mean, we have some urban areas relatively close, but it's about an hour drive to anywhere, any big city area. So we only have a few people to choose from. And the cheapest quote we got just to try to fix the device with a low likelihood of success was in the neighborhood of $150 to resolder those connections, because it's very minute, very tiny work. And needless to say, it's very, very important files. So, it's one of those kind of lesson learned things. And she actually asked me to come in and talk to the principal about ways in which they could back up and store their data.
So what's the status right now? Have you turned it over to the business to try and fix it? Did you even try to get it to run at all?
So I opened it up and saw that the connections were broken. After I tried it in a few devices, I tried wiggling it around a little bit to get it to make contact. When it just wasn't recognizing it all, I did open the case up and see that those connections were broken. So right now we're just kind of waiting it out and seeing what happens. I think it should be done in another couple of days, or we should have an update by the end of the week.
How can that go on so long without anybody thinking about the necessity for redundancy in their data?
Well, it's almost like because it's a parent-teacher thing. It's a volunteer thing. It's just kind of been passed from, in this case, parent to parent and president to president, and it's almost been a rite of passage. Like, oh, you're the president, you get the flash drive now, right? And nobody has really thought to back this up anywhere. The school itself is not very tech savvy. It's a private parochial elementary school. So, they just don't, they're not very, I don't want to say they're still kind of in the paper world quite a bit.
I'm amazed by this, but I'm also wondering, maybe we're thinking in a different world about data than, those folks who are using it and passing it onto each other every year, that we wouldn't think about not having some type of copy somewhere, even if it was on someone's physical computer to be able to get, let alone have it in the cloud.
Right. I did a consultation for an attorney one time who had those. It was still special ordering the triplicate files that he would write on, so that he would have 3 copies that he could pull off, the 2 carbons and the original, that he could put in different places as his backups, right? And he's like, well, so how do I do this with a Word document, How do I have my triplicate? Because he wants it saved 3 places. He wants to know 3 places that he can have it, that if one fails, he'll have the other 2, which actually became a really good analogy for us in looking at the cloud, his physical storage on his device, and then, a flash type solution that he could store all 3 of these places. And really, having that cloud option that automatically synced things for him was really helpful. But it became a really good metaphor. And I think as much as we're engrossed in this, speaking for us, it's interesting to see how much of the world actually hasn't moved on from that place, that are still kind of working in that paper space, right? And how many places lie in between.
Yeah, and I think that's for folks who are in faculty roles, that's a word of warning for you for whatever documents you're working on to kind of have some redundancy. I try not to keep my materials stored on my university computers. If I do have it stored on a university computer, I also have it some redundancy somewhere in my own system, in my own drive. So start to think about, the beginning of the year is a lot of resolutions. Start to think about ways in which you can better protect your data from things. I've washed those. I've put a pair of pants in the washer with those flash drives on before and run them through the dryer, and they've come out and I'm going, oh no. And they've worked. I'm not suggesting that'll work for everybody, but they are pretty good at maintaining integrity if they can survive a wash cycle and a dryer for 40 minutes.
And really, they're pretty resilient. I mean, other than a physical break, they really are fairly resilient. You can, throw them through a wash cycle and sometimes they'll be fine. Drop them, put some pressure on them. As long as they're not physically broken and those contacts are maintained, generally you're okay. I don't advise walking it through like an MRI or something like that, but otherwise fine.
Yeah. But the easiest thing to do is just take them and copy them onto another external hard drive and have backup of them, if not physical or in the cloud. So we did receive some questions. We have one question we'll tackle maybe at another time, which was a rather complicated one. But we did receive questions from our request for questions. So here's a caller.
Hi, Eric and Marty. This is EJ from Kent, Ohio. I was just calling because I've enjoyed listening to your podcast, and I've enjoyed the information you have on to-do lists and note apps. But my question is, maybe you can give a suggestion to me on good apps that would work for notes, specifically for voice to text. A lot of times when I have my best ideas is when I'm driving in the car, and I drive about 36,000 miles this year. So I want to have something that's like easy for me, that's hands-free, that I don't have to mess around with a lot. I can just push one or two buttons and get my ideas out so that I can save those as notes. Thanks a lot.
So that was EJ, and he called us at our message line 937-756-5140 and left us a question. And I'm curious, Eric, if you had any ideas for EJ's situation.
Yeah, I have a couple. One I really like is speech notes. It's been around for a long time. Seems to work really well. I actually just tested it again on my device. I had taken it off for some time. I work remotely primarily, so I don't drive a whole lot. So I thought I'd load it up again and see how it worked, and it works great. Actually, Evernote has an option to do this as well. I don't find that it's as intuitive, but works just as well. And for anybody that really wants the high-end kind of solution, if you do a lot of this speech to text and voice to text, Dragon Speak really is kind of like the Cadillac Rolls-Royce of voice to text, right? They have an application called Dragon Anywhere, which I think is available on both platforms, Marty. You may have to correct me if I'm wrong. I know it's available on Android and, works really well. One thing to keep in mind, I think when I tested these, I had a Wi-Fi connection, and it does require, it's not native. This text recognition is not native. So it does require a fairly good signal for this to keep up in real time. Now, there's times where it will record and then it will translate to text later. But I noticed that with speech notes, it was actively drawing on the connection to put that out at the same time. So that's the couple with Android that I've taken a look at.
Oh, those are Android-based apps is what you're saying.
Yeah, Speech Notes is Evernote and Dragon Anywhere, I think, are cross-platform.
Yeah, I haven't. I used Dragon and Dragon Anywhere for a while. It's an expensive app, at least last time I looked at it, and I was desperate to try and get some way of doing speech to text. And we can talk about this maybe fully on another show, where we talk about speech to text as a process. It was a little clunky on the Mac side, and we kept hearing about how smooth it is on the PC side. Eventually, I found out that there's a simple adjustment that you can do, which is, I think, function 2, and it will bring up a speech to app window on the Mac that will allow you to just go ahead and do that. And it's fairly good. It's as good as Dragon Naturally Speaking and those kinds of apps. From the Mac side, the simple thing to do with trying to solve EJ's problem of getting notes to some place, if you're using Evernote and you're using a device like an iPhone or some iOS device, so you can tell Siri to activate or to save to Evernote and then blah, 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 blah. And it will take that text and save it into your Evernote app as long as you've given it permission to do that. There are other things with shortcuts that you can do that are new on iOS devices that will allow you to set up shortcuts to take audio recordings and also send them to various other apps or various other programs that are on your system. And then there's another app that I would suggest looking at from the iOS end, which has iOS and macOS compatibility. So you find this app in macOS and iOS, and that would be Notability, which has a audio speaker that you can use or an audio microphone that you can use for taking down notes. So those would be my suggestions for EJ or anybody on the Mac OS side if you want to do notes on the fly.
You bring up a really good point, Marty, and I think that's something that maybe I went a little bit too far with, right? Because I had it stuck in my mind that I wanted this speech to text to happen while you're recording, right? When it's actually much simpler just to save the spoken file, right? The audio file and have it translated to text later, which is essentially what Evernote does, right? Takes that file and then can transfer it to text later.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to do it in the moment.
Yeah, I tested it out yesterday knowing we were going to try and respond to EJ's question and went ahead and tried to do it directly through the Evernote app and had a difficult time finding that on finding the way to do that on my iPhone. But then when I did it through Siri directing it to the Evernote app, the first question I got was, will you give permission for Siri to access Evernote? Once I said yes, they said, what would you like to say? I went ahead and said what I was going to say. And then later I checked Evernote and it was there transcribed what I had said directly in an Evernote note.
Do you happen to know, Marty, what the limits for recording are? Are they based on file size or are they based on just kind of like an arbitrary?
I don't know that. My sense that EJ wanted to get some ideas out, so I didn't try to push it.
Yeah, well, and looking at speech notes, one thing that drew me in was that it's unlimited. There's no file size limitations or length limitations in terms of dictation, which I thought was really interesting because a couple others that I looked at and didn't even mention here actually had 2, 3, 5 minute time limits that it would then shut you off, and then you had to create a new file for it to store each time, which I thought was a really interesting feature of speech notes, that it would just continuously record. My guess is that would be limited to based on the space that you would have if that was saving locally, or the signal that you would have if it was uploading to the speech notes servers.
And I'm not sure how long that would be on the Mac end side. It's nice to know that they have unlimited, but of course, then you have to deal with, do you have a strong enough bandwidth to get that to where it needs to go in order to be saved wherever you are doing that. And EJ talked about driving around Ohio and looking for opportunities to do that with. And so he's going to be limited, might be limited, particularly in rural areas. But There are other simple, of course, just microphone apps, recording apps that you can use if you just want the audio file and you don't want the speech to text sort of thing that we can look at. So we'll have these listed in the show notes on the web at thepodtalk.net. You can find those, and we'll have the links to the apps that we talk about, have talked about today, and we'll talk a little bit more about through the rest of the show. So do you have anything new or surprising for us in terms of apps?
No, I mean, those were the big ones. I haven't messed around with a whole lot over break. To be honest, I've spent a great deal of my time playing with my kids' toys. That's really been the focus here. I haven't got to play with my tech a whole lot. We got a new Nintendo Switch, and my daughter's really into anything crafty. So I think I've made bath bombs, soaps, and tie-dye T-shirts for everyone we know at this point.
Wow. That's, we got a new puppy. I thought during break, that would be a great time to get a new puppy because I'll have all this free time on my hands and I can be home all day. And that dog is exhausting. She's asleep on the couch behind me right now, and I'm hoping she'll stay quiet through all the recording. But she is exhausting. So I haven't had time to play much with tech either in terms of getting things going.
What kind of dog is she, Marty, if I can? What kind of dog is she, if I can ask?
She is a 14-week-old purebred German Shepherd, sable German Shepherd. We lost our 15-year-old pet back in late October, and she was part German Shepherd and part Australian Ridgeback. But this one, we had done a whole series of rescue dogs, and this one we decided to get from a breeder who also trains police and protection dogs and for the military and such. Not that we're concerned about that. We wanted a nice, good family trainable pet, but she is a handful. And I'm enjoying her. And then you have these moments where you really know that the animal is bonding with you and looks up at you, and you know that it's about they're giving you the attention. And then other times it's like, I have removed the cabinet knobs off of the cabinets in my den. So the dog has nothing to chew on other than the things that we give her as replacements. So I wanted to bring to attention, because of the issue I had with having to reload a lot of software with the clean sweep that I had. An app that I have had for a while, but I haven't really used as much. There is a service, actually. It's an app, but it provides a service called Setapp. And it is a service that there's an educational discount for $6 a month if you do an annual subscription, but it's generally $10 a month for non-educational settings or non-educational subscriptions. But it's really quite a cool service. Have you heard about it, Eric? Has it gone into your? It's not a Windows-based service, from what I can tell.
I haven't. No, and I think that's probably why. Yeah, it appears to be just for Mac users.
But what it has is a collection of about 100 different apps that, if you're doing a lot of things with your Mac, Setapp will give you a cafeteria of apps that you can load, and you can load as many as you want. That's part of the service, and you get to use them, of course, as long as you have the service. So there were some apps that I was using even before I found the service, like RapidWeaver for web development, and PDF Pen, which is a great app for PDF work and PDF editing. And when I get students' papers or dissertations, I ask them to send them to me in PDF, and then I can use PDF Pen to do editing directly into the document and send it back to them. There were other things like Clean My Mac, which is a great cleaner for the stuff that the garbage that starts to build up on your Mac internally and system-wide. Bartender, Bartender is a menu bar app that allows you to collect icons under one area, so you can organize your menu bar icons. And then Cloud Outliner, which is for outlining documents. And then Blogo, if you have a blog, it's an app that automatically delivers whatever you create to your blog. So I found that I was using a lot of these apps. Some of them I had already purchased, but it was great to have this service. And it particularly became useful to me when my system crashed and I had to reload a bunch. So I wound up reloading Setapp. Well, I had the account, so all I did was open up the account on the fresh computer and establish the apps that I wanted instead of going and chasing for other ones. Now, there are hundreds, there's 100 apps to choose from. So over this break, while I was trying to do some editing and do some screen capturing, they had a program on there called Capto. And so I went ahead and grabbed that app. So as projects come up, I'll jump to Setapp to see if anything's in there that will help me with what I'm doing on a new project. So I know a lot of people kind of shirk at subscription services, but that's the way a lot of apps are going nowadays. It seems to be worth its value. I started with Setapp probably when they had maybe 40 or 50 apps. So they keep adding apps to the till, and now it's kind of hit the tipping point where it's very much worth the subscription for that service. So I'm kind of plugging that one away for people to take a look at. They have a 2-week trial, so you can try it on and see if you find value in it. At least try it for 2 weeks and see.
I was actually just taking a look while you were talking, Marty, and I'm a little bit disappointed that they don't have a PC version. And I'm wondering if there's something analogous out there. I'm going to have to take a look and see what I can find.
Take a look at it and see if you find something like that for the next show. But this was a lifesaver for me, having to reload and reinstall everything.
Yeah, I remember the days of having like a stack of disks on my desk and reformatting my hard drive and reloading Windows and then going through those one by one to reinstall each program that I wanted to have, looking for all the activation codes and whatever. And, now there's so much out there. It's so much simpler. And it really does feel like a cleanse. And you can tell how your system runs. Once you've had the opportunity to do that. A crash is not always a bad thing as long as you have everything backed up where you need it to be. And that's where I think Setapp sounds like it's really helpful.
So I think that's it for this week's show. If listeners want to get involved, you can get involved like EJ does. Give us a call on our hotline or message line, 937-756-5140, and leave a message for us that or a question that you have for us. Maybe you're trying to figure something out with technology, or you just have an idea to share that we can talk about on the show. You can also email us at the podtalknetwork@gmail.com. And we're part of the Pod Talk Network. The show links and information will be on the podtalk.net website. We're also developing some new shows. Grad School Deconstructed and Supervision Time. Grad School Deconstructed is about anybody who's trying to work their way through graduate school. And Supervision Time is a program that is about folks who are doing clinical supervision and want ideas and ways in which to do that. Also, there's the sort of the flagship show, the faculty meeting, and of course, the Tech Savvy Professor podcast that you're listening to right now. That's it for today's show. Eric?
Sure, yeah. I want to thank everyone for listening and for subscribing to the Tech Savvy Professor podcast. You can find us by searching iTunes for the Tech Savvy Professor. Look for us on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Google Play Music, and on Twitter at pod_network. Please keep the positive reviews coming for the show. We love them, and it's really the best payback we can get and bring others to the show. We want to thank you for listening, and you're getting savvier by the minute.